On August 18, 1774, in the rolling hills of Albemarle County, Virginia, a boy named Meriwether Lewis was born into a land already rich with history and alive with the spirit of exploration. His birthplace lay not far from the plantation of Monticello, where another Virginian, Thomas Jefferson, was shaping his own vision of liberty and discovery. The timing of Lewis's birth could not have been more fateful. The colonies were on the verge of revolution, and the nation that would one day send him westward into the unknown had not yet been born. Lewis entered the world in a frontier household, surrounded by farms, forests, and the spirit of self-reliance. His father, William Lewis, was a Revolutionary War officer, while his mother, Lucy Meriwether Lewis, was known for her knowledge of herbal medicine and resourcefulness. When Meriwether was just 5 years old, his father died of pneumonia, leaving Lucy to raise him and his siblings largely on her own. The loss taught Lewis early lessons about responsibility, resilience, and the fragility of life. Growing up in the Virginia wilderness, young Meriwether showed an insatiable curiosity about the natural world. He roamed the forests, observed animals, collected plants, and practiced shooting with a rifle. The wilderness became his classroom, and he its most eager student. His mother nurtured his love of botany, teaching him which plants healed and which harmed. These lessons would prove invaluable decades later, when he cataloged new species on the far side of the continent. At 13, Lewis was sent to formal schooling in Georgia, living with relatives who ensured he learned Latin, literature, and mathematics. Though his academic record was solid, it was his outdoor skills and adventurous spirit that defined him. He was not simply a scholar or a planter's son, he was a boy being shaped by two worlds: the cultivated traditions of Virginia's elite and the raw independence of the American frontier. In 1794, at just 20 years old, Lewis joined the Virginia militia, helping to quell the Whiskey Rebellion in Pennsylvania. It was his first taste of military service, and he quickly adapted to discipline and leadership. Soon after, he enlisted in the U.S. Army, where his talents were recognized by higher officers. By 1800, he had risen to the rank of captain, serving along the western frontier where tensions with Native American nations and foreign powers simmered constantly. It was during his military career that Lewis first crossed paths with William Clark, a fellow officer whose character and leadership style left a strong impression. Though their acquaintance at the time was brief, fate would reunite them in one of history's most famous partnerships. In 1801, Meriwether Lewis's life took a decisive turn. Thomas Jefferson, newly elected as the third President of the United States, invited Lewis to serve as his personal secretary. Jefferson admired Lewis's sharp mind, knowledge of the frontier, and reliability as a military officer. For Lewis, the opportunity was life-changing. Living at the President's house in Washington, Lewis became Jefferson's confidant, managing correspondence, meetings, and even social affairs. More importantly, he absorbed Jefferson's expansive vision of America, a nation stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific, guided by science, discovery, and Republican ideals. Jefferson had long dreamed of exploring the vast lands beyond the Mississippi, and with the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, his dream became a national imperative. Who better to lead such an expedition than the trusted young officer who shared his love of nature and his spirit of adventure? Jefferson appointed Meriwether Lewis to command the Corps of Discovery, with a clear mission: explore the newly acquired territory, find a water route to the Pacific, and establish relations with native nations. Lewis knew the expedition would demand not only courage, but also knowledge. Before departing, he trained intensively in the sciences. Jefferson arranged for him to study medicine, astronomy, botany, zoology, and cartography, with leading experts in Philadelphia. He learned how to use navigational instruments, treat wounds, and preserve plant specimens. The preparation revealed Jefferson's intent. This was not just an adventure, but a scientific mission, one that would expand the boundaries of human knowledge. Understanding the weight of responsibility, Lewis sought a co-leader. He turned to William Clark, the man he had once served with in the Army. Clark accepted, and their partnership became the backbone of the Corps of Discovery. Where Lewis was intense, intellectual, and sometimes moody, Clark was calm, steady, and practical. Together, they balanced each other perfectly, On May 14, 1804, the Corps of Discovery set out from Camp Dubois near St. Louis, with 45 men, a keelboat, and a mission that seemed impossible. They faced thousands of miles of uncharted terrain, hostile weather, unknown rivers, and the uncertainty of whether a navigable water route to the Pacific even existed. Lewis documented the journey meticulously, recording plants, animals, landscapes, and encounters. His journals reveal a man both awed by the beauty of the land and burdened by the responsibility of leadership. Alongside Clark, he navigated challenges with discipline and ingenuity. The Corps traveled up the Missouri River, facing swarms of mosquitoes, searing heat, and treacherous currents. They encountered numerous native nations, the Otto, the Teton Sioux, the Mandan, and others. Some meetings were friendly, others tense. Lewis and Clark emphasized diplomacy, offering gifts and Jefferson's words of friendship, while also demonstrating the power of American weapons when needed. At Fort Mandan in present-day North Dakota, the expedition wintered in 1804-05. There they met Toussaint Charbonneau, a French-Canadian trader, and his young Shoshone wife, Sacagawea. Sacagawea soon became an indispensable member of the Corps, serving as interpreter, guide, and symbol of peace as the group pushed westward. In the spring of 1805, the Corps set out again, traveling through the daunting Rocky Mountains. The journey was brutal. Snow, hunger, and exhaustion tested the men to their limits. Sacagawea's presence proved invaluable when her Shoshone kin provided horses and guidance to cross the passes. Lewis, fascinated by the natural world, documented new species at every turn: grizzly bears, pronghorns, and prairie dogs, to name a few. His scientific curiosity never wavered, even when survival was uncertain. By November 1805, after more than a year of struggle, the Corps of Discovery reached the mouth of the Columbia River and gazed upon the Pacific Ocean. For Lewis, it was a moment of triumph. The United States had, through its explorers, touched the western edge of the continent. The Corps built Fort Clatsop near modern-day Astoria, Oregon, where they endured a miserable winter of constant rain. Yet the achievement of reaching the Pacific was undeniable. When they turned back east in the spring of 1806, they carried maps, specimens, and knowledge that would reshape the young nation. The Corps of Discovery returned to St. Louis on September 23, 1806, to a hero's welcome. They had traveled more than 8,000 miles, endured countless hardships, and lost only one man to natural causes. Lewis and Clark were celebrated as national heroes, their names etched into the story of America's westward expansion. Lewis's reports and maps provided invaluable knowledge of the lands acquired through the Louisiana Purchase. He described over 200 plants and animals new to science, forged relationships with native nations, and demonstrated the feasibility of expansion westward. Jefferson rewarded Lewis with the governorship of the Louisiana Territory, a vast domain stretching from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. Yet the role proved more difficult than exploration. Bureaucracy, political infighting, and financial troubles plagued his administration. Lewis struggled with paperwork and with enemies who questioned his competence. Isolation, debt, and stress weighed heavily on him. Some contemporaries noted his increasing reliance on alcohol and periods of deep melancholy. The same man who had led men through wilderness with confidence now found himself overwhelmed by the intricacies of politics and governance. In 1809, Lewis set out for Washington, D.C. to resolve financial disputes with the government. Traveling along the Natchez Trace in Tennessee, he stopped at Grinder's Stand, a roadside inn. On the night of October 11, 1809, Meriwether Lewis died of gunshot wounds. Whether his death was suicide or murder remains one of history's enduring mysteries. Some accounts suggest he took his own life, consumed by depression and despair. Others argue he was attacked by robbers or assassins. Whatever the truth, his life ended at just 35 years old, a tragic close to a story of immense promise. Though his death was shrouded in uncertainty, Meriwether Lewis's legacy endured. The Lewis and Clark expedition became a foundational myth of American expansion, embodying courage, discovery, and the restless spirit of the frontier. Lewis's scientific contributions enriched knowledge of the continent's ecology, and his partnership with Clark remains one of the most celebrated in U.S. history. In 2009, 200 years after his death, Lewis was posthumously honored with a reburial ceremony recognizing his service to the nation. Today, travelers along the Natchez Trace can visit his grave, marked by a monument that reads, "Immortal by his discoveries." Facts about Meriwether. Lewis Meriwether Lewis was born near Monticello, the home of Thomas Jefferson. He lost his father at age 5 and was raised primarily by his mother. He was a neighbor of the Jefferson family and later became Jefferson's personal secretary. Lewis studied medicine, botany, and astronomy before the expedition to prepare for exploration. The Lewis and Clark expedition covered over 8,000 miles in 2.5 years. Sacagawea carried her infant son during much of the journey. Lewis documented more than 200 plants and animals previously unknown to science. Only one member of the Corps of Discovery died during the expedition. Lewis became governor of the Louisiana Territory, but struggled with the role. His mysterious death in 1809 is still debated. Suicide or murder remains unresolved. Meriwether Lewis's story is both inspiring and tragic. Born into the wilderness of Virginia, he rose to become the leader of America's greatest expedition, pushing into lands unseen by his countrymen and leaving a record of courage, science, and endurance. He proved that discovery was not only about finding new places, but also about building knowledge, bridging cultures, and daring to dream of a nation stretched across a continent. Yet Lewis's life also reminds us of the weight of ambition and the burden of leadership. His brilliance shone brightest in the wild, where rivers and mountains challenged him, but also gave him purpose. In politics and administration, his spirit faltered, and his untimely death remains a wound in the story of exploration. Still, the legacy of Meriwether Lewis endures. Every river mapped, every species catalogued, every mile crossed by the Corps of Discovery was a testament to his vision and resilience. His life encourages us to seek beyond the familiar, to face the unknown with courage, and to remember that discovery is both a triumph and a journey without end.